There's our pretty faces. Good. Make this show public. Share it. Yes, those of you on YouTube, yes, I'm talking to myself, but we'll be ready to go here in just a moment. All right, I think that does it. Hey everyone, welcome to the new media show. This is the Wednesday edition. I had to check what date it was. And of course, we're a little bit late today. I had a client appointment. I just could not delay. And then, but we're here. And those of you that are listening to this don't care because you're getting it on demand. So the live audience, thanks. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Todd. I'm good.
So I had an interesting conversation. And I think it's probably worthy of a discussion. And I'm not breaking any confidentialities. This is all would make perfectly good sense if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So television, what are they normally doing about this time of year? And we're both not TV people, but think about it for a second.
They're talking about summer stuff, right? It's right around the corner.
Well, they're recording stuff in the summer for fall.
Right.
They're not recording now. There's going to be nothing for fall.
Oh, so you're talking about television production?
Television, yeah.
Or movie productions? Yeah,
same thing.
Stuff's all on hold right now.
Yeah. So part of the feeding frenzy that I've been going through over the past 9 weeks is I begin to piece this together. And it really didn't dawn on me because I just been head down, like helping clients. People are freaked out in a big way that there is going to be no new TV stuff for the fall. And they're trying to figure out what can they do.
Right.
Thus, all of a sudden, this huge interest in corporations in putting together something in the podcast space.
I don't know how that's a replacement, though.
Well, they have no other alternative.
I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to start doing kind of live productions more? Live or remote productions for network television, or kind of like what's happening on CNN and NBC and ABC and all these folks? Or I don't know.
No,
I don't know what they're going to do.
They can't record a sitcom or they can't put together, whatever. I don't watch 13 episode TV.
No, that's right. But they have been playing around with, like live music performances on television. There's been other stuff that they're going to do. And I think they are going to bring back sports, just as sports is probably going to be more likely played in front of empty stadiums, But it's all going to be television.
But what if they don't bring back college sports? What if they, there's some of that stuff is undecided. So we'll see what happens here. But there is going to be at least 75% less new TV programming come fall.
Yep.
And we've all been locked down. I'm here, and this is week 9, middle of week 9. I'm already digging deep into Netflix and Amazon Prime and CBS and all those apps. I'm already digging deep to find something. And what I have been doing is, I think the big winner here, number one, is going to be YouTube. I think they're going to win big.
Right. Anyone
that can come out with weekly. I've been watching some sailing show called Zatara. Binge watch that. So those YouTubers are going to be winners. And I've been playing a lot more podcasts now because I don't really have nothing to watch on television. So my projection is that even though we're flat right now, come about August, September timeframe, I bet you we see an explosion in. I bet you the number. I just put it out there. I think we're gonna have an explosion in listeners for the fall. It's a double whammy. Now think about this. So,
yeah, but Todd, I mean, we can't say that these television networks are going to sit idle here
they are
let
idle.
this happen. No, I understand they're going to innovate, right? They're going to come up with new types of ways to produce content that will enable social distance.
Rob, that's monumental.
I know it is. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think that they've got to fill opportunity.
They got to fill 4 or 5 hours in the evening of prime time of stuff they don't have.
Right.
So we'll see what they become innovative. My prediction is that as we roll into September, October, and things start to get colder, and people are, because I think we're going to see a big hit over the summer. I think people are going to be outside a lot more because they've been stuck in their houses. Right. So I think we're going to see a bigger hit than we normally would during the summer. But come fall, people are going to be like, well, what's my new 13-week sitcom? Nothing.
Right.
Well,
there's going to be an upswing in people watching reruns, but
people don't watch.
I don't know.
Who watches reruns? No one watches reruns.
Well, that's going to be a big problem for them. I agree with you.
And, in my opinion, this is a perfect opportunity for anyone that's listening to this show to say, okay, what can I make a plan now? So if you're a podcaster and you're doing something cool that can translate to something that will be, my Slack is going ape shit crazy. Let me turn this down.
It's popping up notifications.
Everyone wants to. So I think there's an opportunity here for people that are doing live, and so we'll see what happens here during the fall, and it depends on how long they're off. Let's say they're off 6 months.
Right.
It gets worse because they run in 13 weeks, so that's 4 months, 3 months, and then they have.
Todd, if you think about some of the TV productions out there, like The Voice, there's judges that are sitting next to each other. They could be socially distanced from each other. And then the performers on stage, they're a long ways away from the judges, and you just don't have an audience, right?
Do you think
there's going to be programs that will continue?
Do you think those people just walk out there and sing? There's more that goes on. There's all kinds of handling. There's training. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
No, agreed. But there's going to be protocols that they're going to use. It's the same thing that's going on as we open up a little bit more, right? There's going to be procedures and processes that people have to go through to keep people safe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the studios are going to come up with ways that they can do stuff, not just shut stuff down.
Well, just remember the studios are mostly in California,
right?
And California's saying we're not even going to let you out of your house now until end of July. So
there's a lot of productions up in Vancouver, British Columbia, as well. So
those places are open. That's where the business is going, because everyone's going to exit. They're going to load the trucks up and they're going to say, "Let's go film somewhere else that's open and get away from
right,
this dictatorship that's going on in California." So I guess we will see what happens.
Well, Todd, there's also a trend right now too of some of these countries around the world that tried to open up, and now they're starting to shut back down again because they had a surge in cases. So these are all factors that can come impact us.
I haven't even heard that. So, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But so far, Florida, the state that was supposed to see this huge surge, didn't. So Georgia didn't. So again, we'll continue to watch this. I think there's that's someone scolded us. We got scolded.
Well,
we got scolded?
We did win.
On the last show, we got scolded.
By whom?
By a listener.
Uh-huh.
Scolding us, said that when we start talking about 5G, we sound like whack jobs.
Okay, that's fine. I think you need to be a little more specific.
Well, I deleted the comment because I thought it was a little over the top. And here's the thing. Rob and I are not doctors. We're not virologists. We're not politicians. We're podcasters, but we do have an opinion. And when we were laughing,
there's a lot of conspiracy theories flying around right now.
That's great.
Unsubstantiated.
So when we were laughing about people thinking 5G was causing coronavirus, and I was explaining what the 5G frequency really was because I do know about RF frequency. I can speak to that. Is one thing I am an expert in. It's not malarkey. As I said, sit in your house, have a 5G signal outside. It's not going to get to you. Okay.
Right.
But anyway, long story short, so they don't want us talking. We got to stay in our swim lanes here, or we sound like whacked out.
Okay, Todd.
But another thing too, though, is Rob, borders are closed. You can't go to Canada right now.
Right. You can't go.
Right.
You can't go to Australia. You can't go to Europe.
There's a lot of places. There's a lot of places you can go, but you got to stay 14 days in quarantine before you can venture out.
Right. And who's going to want to do that?
Right. So anyway, I think podcasting. Again, I'm bullish on podcasting, and a lot of people are because my phone's ringing off the hook. So,
well, and Todd, I can't name names, but there's going to be some huge new podcast listening platforms coming online here very soon. So
that's good.
Yeah, there's going to be, there's an opportunity for growth there.
So I saw that you got mentioned by the way, Mr. Cridlin. We have been talking on this show for many years, that Apple should create an Android app.
Right.
Okay. We've been talking about this long before you even probably knew what the word podcast meant. So I know that you took some credit. Brilliant minds think the same. Well,
okay.
That was a little comment. I'm like, okay, go back 5 years and listen to this show. We've been saying this for longer than that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It certainly is true. But one thing that we didn't really think. One thing we didn't really think was going to happen way back then was Google putting an app on iOS.
No, that came as a surprise. Yeah, we didn't. We actually I think we kind of laughed about it and mentioned it, but we really never thought they would do that.
Yeah, right. Yes, Mike Dell, huge.
So I'm very, very bullish right now on podcasting. I think that I think it's going to be big. I think it's just, I think we're in for an inflection point. Right. I might be wrong. I may be completely wrong. But if you think about it, most people, okay, they can play some music. I do not. Okay, I saw somewhere some guy was playing his guitar on a 30-minute segment on a certain news channel, and I'm like, click, and let me find something else to watch. Now, maybe that's your thing. Maybe that's good. For me, if I want to, we've got a team member that loves concerts. She goes to every concert she can go to. She's in withdrawals because she can't go to any concert. I love watching big concerts on big stages on TV. I do like watching that. But some dude strumming.
So I think you're talking about Mackenzie, right?
Yeah, Mackenzie's a big concert goer. Huge, right? But for me to watch someone on TV strumming, it's that to me it's like, all right, if I'm washing dishes, okay, I'll let it play. But I'm not going to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
When I watch TV, when I take my precious time and give it to the TV, when I watch something, I want to watch something and would be entertained. So they're going to have to come up with something. Entertaining is now, a lot of that stuff is going to be restricted. So podcasting. Get your podcast going, folks.
Right. Now's the time, right?
See, it is the time.
Well, and I can tell you, just based on that article that I wrote for Pod News, we do need to work on listenership. We got to get, I'm not sure what's going on there, and I know you're not seeing it in your numbers, but we certainly are. We can always get bigger on the listening side. Yeah.
We've been looking at
100,000 podcasts in 1 month, Todd.
The what?
That's a lot. 100,000 new podcasts, 91,000 in 1 month.
That's
new shows.
That's an incredible number.
Right.
So that's why we're busy.
Yeah, it is. Right.
I can tell by the idle chitter chatter happening in certain spaces we hang out. That's very low because we're all crushed. It's just like today. It's like, client says, I need to meet with you tomorrow at 3:00. Yes. No problem. I'll clear the schedule for you. And I did. I texted Rob, we need to go at 3:30. I can't go at 3.
Right.
Certain clients, you just have to say, yes, I'll clear the schedule for you and cancel someone else. You got canceled for 30 minutes, Rob.
Yeah, that's right. So it's official now. Google has started down the path of killing off Google Play Music and podcasts.
Yay! Should you had confetti? Pop the confetti.
Really happy about that? Are we really happy about that? Yes.
Yes, we are. Pop the confetti. So maybe they probably already had a plan, but we could say, at least on this show, we tell them, please kill Google Play. Maybe that helped expedite things a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. I think those kind of things are usually planned for a little bit further in advance. But yeah, it's good to see them really putting some serious effort. Google is really doing a nice job here.
So I'm speaking tomorrow at a virtual event. Did you speak at one today, or when's your time slot for that other one?
Mine launched on the NAB Show Express platform today. It's not live. It's a pre-recorded segment that I did on podcast monetization.
Oh, I see how you are.
Yes.
So, but you weren't. How many people listened to that? Do you know?
I don't know. It just launched at noon today Eastern.
So it was live. It was played live.
It was pre-recorded, and it was just made available at a certain time and day. So it was on like a scheduled of pre-produced videos.
Oh, so they played it.
But they do also have live event type stuff going on simultaneously.
So it's on demand. So it's some video sitting somewhere that you can click play.
Right.
Oh.
But you have to log in to the nabshow.com, create an account, and then you can go through and select your sessions that you want to watch.
I bet you're going to get a whole 10 views on that.
Could be.
That's a good question. But that other conference going on, so how many people are that are on that pay conference that's going on today?
Which one was this?
We talked about, we had him on here.
Oh, no, that doesn't start till closer to the end of the month.
Oh, okay. So Outlier is going on today.
Yeah.
And I haven't had time to be on there all day. But I've been podcast business work.
Oh, are you on that one?
Tomorrow at 11. And actually, my presentation is like 80% done. So as soon as this show's over, I got to finish my presentation. So
yeah,
I know in my head what I want to put in the slides, but
yeah.
I've got 45 minutes, Rob. 45 minutes and me and slides, that's like 100 slides.
Wow. Flipping through those babies pretty fast there, sir.
I'm going to leave some time for Q&A, but
yeah.
16 years of podcasting, and what is the title of my, let me go look, give you the title of what I titled it. Can't even remember my title. That tells you how, let's see here. Oh, there it is. It's 16 years of podcasting and strategies to succeed today.
Right.
So
that sounds good.
Yep. I pulled that title just kind of out of thin air. Like, what should I talk about? Well, 16. You write a course around a title.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention also that everybody's jumping on these, utilizing Zoom and Skype and StreamYard and Squadcast and stuff like this. And I kind of alluded to this in my article that I wrote for Pod News, but there is a high quality audio platform that you can use to share an audio source with another, like a studio or whatever, so you can get a high quality recording. And it's called Source Connect Now. I've used it for a couple of podcasts that I was a guest on, and it does really, really high bitrate, high quality audio, and it's free. It's at Source. Now I don't have the actual domain name here, but it's just Source Connect Now is what it's called.
Yeah, I went to some other website, so it goes over. Oh, that's weird. It redirects to a different page.
Yeah, it's an older platform, but it's something that a lot of the high-end radio studio producers use, and I noticed that they came out with a free version of it. So I just wanted to mention it.
This is where it led me to. Is this it?
Yeah, that's it.
You are a guest of, Guy Harris. Oh, this can't be it. This must be. Oh, that was weird. So let me Google it.
I think it was something. Yeah, I think it was a different page. Probably is what
Source Connect now. Oh, it's Source dash. Oh,
dash Connect.
Here we go.
Right.
Whoops. How come I'm not showing the? Oh, there we go. Source dash Connect dash now. Oh my God. Now.source-elements.com. What a horrible domain name.
Yeah, that is a horrible domain name.
And does it cost anything?
I believe this is a free version that you can get. That it's kind of like a point-to-point kind of connection. It's a little bit like a Zoom or something like that connects via a browser on both ends.
Yeah.
But it does really high quality audio
for web-based.
For a web-based recording between two locations on a remote. I mean, you probably would use this.
So does it do
with a mixer?
Does it do head-to-head or?
No, it's usually comes into like your computer and then it's sourced through a mixer or something like that. So it's kind of more of a high-end solution.
That's interesting here. Because if you do a recording on a web browser, it's the same quality as going into a Audacity or anything like that. It doesn't change the quality. So I wonder how they're
but you can bring in a remote guest is what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's Rob, I've got a little notepad here of cool resources, and I'm pasting it in there right now because I want to save that one.
Yep.
So it worked out well for you then. Two people used it, but you both had mixers and everything then.
Well, I was a guest into another show's studio.
Oh, right? I see.
So it's a way to bring in a guest into a studio, not by using Skype or Zoom or any of these platforms. It's more of a point-to-point connection. You know, it's kind of similar to what was done for many years with the ISDN connections that radio would use.
Oh, I see what they've done. They've used the core audio driver, so you become an actual audio driver.
Right.
Whoa, exactly. That's impressive.
Yep.
That isn't. How hard was that to set up?
You just install the software.
And you press, and it recognized your mic, and off you went? You didn't have to do any settings or anything? It was...
I don't recall. Well, I think I did, because I've got multiple mic and multiple stuff here. So I think you do have to go and just make sure it's pointed to the right driver in your system.
Huh. So it works with Mac OS 10, Windows 7 or higher, Linux, and Chrome OS. Wow. A stereo or multi-mono core audio ISO or Linux audio device. So that's really, really slick. I got to thinking about that because if you're on your mic, your mixer still has to be hooked up to your computer. In my setup, I don't have a mixer hooked up to my computer. Most people do, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, because I run into the way I record the show is I've got a standard mixer setup, but I don't have a USB or anything running back to this machine. It's standalone. Although I have a couple of mixers that have the interconnection and does that ISO piece. But I just feed my recording into a Denon. You know, I've got a device here that's just it's a brick inside it's just a Denon recorder that's in an 18-inch rack. You know, that's my dedicated recorder now. Then I do the video recording on a H.264 capture card on the Mac Pro in the production studio. So,
So Matt Cundale made a comment in the chat. I don't know if you want to read that, Todd.
So a lot of voiceover people who couldn't go to the local studio to record scrambled to get Source connecting to their home studio so they could have their voices recorded and get paid dollars. So that's interesting. So they must have had some quality mic beforehand if you're going to be a voiceover person.
Right, of course. And so he agrees there's a free version that's newer now. But this software has been around for a long time, but I just wanted to mention it to the podcasting community because I don't think the podcast community has known about this software, and it's really been a kind of a radio thing.
But if it gets you better, and they have a $125 version too, did you pay for it or you use a free one?
No, I just used a free one, and I got a PDF basically that the show shared with me about how to set it up and get it installed on my system.
I gotcha. So Matt, are you using this, and do you use the paid or free version of this?
Hey Matt, you're welcome to call in if you want to talk more about it. Yeah,
talk about it. I'm kind of intrigued. GNC Pod 2 is the Skype address. You just search for Geek News Central in Skype and use GNC Pod 2 as the call-in line. You probably have to add, and I'll have to approve you if you want to call in. See, Rob, is this kind of stuff that we find, or you found, it's super valuable.
So.
I'd have never known about this. And, I keep hearing about people struggling to get, but, I don't know. We get good quality here on Skype. To me, you sound...
Quality is important.
To me, you sound like you're on a mic next to me. Now, we've run into bandwidth issues in the past where you become garbled and so forth, but that's going to happen on any system where you're doing anything over the internet. Nothing's perfect. But, and again, for those of you that are listening to this show, I've just got a Mac Mini. It's an older Mac Mini. Audio out, goes into the mixer. Then I use a Mix Minus, which I know some of you eyes just glazed over, to bring my audio back to Rob, and it works, and it works well.
Yeah, and it sounds good too.
So anyway, very, very cool. There was something else I was going to talk about.
Well, the Edison Research folks are going to be doing a webinar on May 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern, basically trying to cover the changes that are happening to podcasting because of people's quarantine. It's called Podcasting, Connection, and Community during the quarantine.
I didn't get an automated invite. I must have been removed from the mailing list.
He made Tom pretty mad at us. But yeah, if you go, it's a webinar that's coming up with Tom and team.
So May 21st. That'd be a good one.
Yep. So that's 1 p.m. Eastern with Tom Webster from the Edison Research folks. I guess it was a previously unreleased data from Podcast Consumer Tracker. So interesting.
I don't know. I'm just, I'm looking too at my town. And my town is, small town America, 30,000 people in this town. And I would say we're like 90% open, even though the state is supposed to be locked down. It really looks like everything's open. People have just basically said we're opening. And with 53 cases in about a 50-mile square area, I don't blame them. Although you go 100 miles away from here, and Detroit is, still got issues. But I think people's patience are running thin. So I had a call today, and I won't say what company it was. I was shocked because when the video conference started, I was looking at 5 people in a same room, and I was just like, "Wow, this is the first meeting I've had in 2 months where everyone was in the same room." And they said, we never, they basically said, we never change our operating habits. We're all here. We're all working. We've been working in the office from the get-go. And they've got about 40 people in their office. And I was just like, okay. So I was actually kind of surprised, and
well, it does seem like things are opening up.
well, they never changed. They stayed like they were. And I was just like, that was a little bit of a shocker to me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it is true in certain parts of the country there really hasn't been much of an outbreak. I think a lot of it has to do with just the population density is so small that it hasn't spread that much.
Where they were was a pretty high. I'm not gonna say what.
Was it?
Yeah, pretty high density. Because I asked them, I said, "Where are you guys at?" And they tell me, I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
So, I was. So how many? I'm just kind of curious. Anyone else, has been operations as normal? You didn't really change. And I'm looking at that state's reporting. I can't say too much because I'm going to give it away, and then people are going to be able to start narrowing what down and way people are. I don't want to get them to get triggered. A little bit to me. Oh, what was that?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it is true.
Here comes Matt.
There really hasn't been much of an outbreak. I think a lot of it has to do with just the
Matt. We're getting a feedback from you. We can hear you. We can hear us. It was pretty high. I'm not gonna say what.
Was it?
Yeah, pretty high density. Because I asked them, I said, "Where are you guys at?" And they definitely turn off your live stream.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, Matt.
There we go. How you doing?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Hi, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Awesome.
I was freaking out because I was hearing myself talk. I was like, "Where did that come from?"
I know.
That's the old radio thing where you can't call in. You got to hang up the phone if you're going to dial into the show.
Yeah, so you got to leave you got to stop the live stream, so you're going to miss about a minute of it. So you've used this tool then for a while, huh?
Yeah, I have I don't carry it myself as a voiceover person. I just record in my own studio because I built my own studio. But it's a successful tool for a lot of voiceover people who need to dial into a studio to record their parts. And so it's sort of all done, in the one big studio. And this has been the scramble for, this whole COVID thing for a lot of voiceover people is, a lot of the top ones don't actually have home studios, and they've been sent home and they can't come down to the studio to record. So now there's a scramble on for microphones and for equipment and for Source Connect in order to do this. I have one voiceover partner, and she said that the free version of Source Connect is not strong enough for her to. The connection is not strong enough really for a high quality voiceover. So she's moving to the paid version. But if you look at a lot of voiceover artists online, they will have the Source Connect logo up on their site, and you're more marketable right now with Source Connect. And Rob mentioned this earlier. Just before I went outside to go collect cupcakes, which is an entirely different story. But that ISDN was for many years the standard for piping in big voiceover people to record their parts.
So ISDN had enough throughput to be able to do that big enough quality.
Right.
That's surprising to me because I don't know what the quality is on Skype. I don't know what throughput we get here.
I think it was more of a dedicated VPN type of connection.
Well, ISDN, but that still wasn't that. I had when I was living in Hawaii, when you were on here in Hawaii, Rob, you were on an ISDN line.
Yeah.
That's how bad the internet was on my secondary connection. You were on ISDN.
Yeah.
So, and that's why it was bandwidth limited.
Also pretty expensive too, because the connections that they used required a certain hardware device on each end.
Right.
That would do a certain type of an encoding between the two devices that would make the audio quality much higher. And those endpoints were very expensive. I think they were like, I don't know, Matt, they were like maybe $1,000 each or something like that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a pain, and we'd always have to pass the cost on when we did radio remotes. My background, by the way, is far too many years in radio, and we would have to set up and put in an ISDN connection. We'd call the phone company; they would put it in down at the car lot, and we would run it back to the radio station, and there was quite a lot of cost involved. So we'd always encourage, the car dealer to buy many remotes, 8-9 weeks at a time. So that way, you get value for the ISDN line. And then I think there was a time around 2012 where we started to get away from that, and we were looking at something called tie line and using some internet features to get it back to the radio station. But the one thing we always wanted to avoid was using the telephone.
Yeah, I had for
or
years.
Cell phone, even worse.
As a matter of fact, in my right behind me or in front of me, 10 feet away on a shelf is 2 Telos devices that I used to get someone in via a phone call. And I had first 5-6 years we did this show, I had people calling in, and yeah, that was rough. That was like 16 kilobits or something like that. It was.
Yeah, I just sold my dual digital Getner to a radio show host down in Salt Lake City, the one that I had in my studio for many years. So yeah,
you sold it to him recently?
Yeah.
What's he going to use it for?
Bringing in calls.
Oh my God.
It was a radio show.
Okay, well,
I'm just stuck in it for 1 second. I've got something I want to show you.
Okay. Sure. Oh, that's funny. He's gonna go dig in his 20. Oh, here it comes. Going to show us a 20-year rack or something.
Well, it's not. It's actually this is an Innkeeper PBX.
I've got one of those.
Yeah,
PBX, right? Yeah.
These work for telephone, and I had people come on my podcast, and to explain Skype or to explain where the technology was, and as recently as 2016, I had a lot of older folk who I'd want to bring on to my podcast, and they just had a telephone in their office, and this was the way to do it, and so I tried to accommodate them, and I still have a smaller version of that, but when this box is still today $600,
right? I've got a JK Audio, and I never liked it. That's why I went with the Telos brand, and that was like $1,500 that box. And I found one on eBay because I wanted to run 2 at one time, and I bought a second one that was a little hokey. It would always connect. You had to mash the button 3 or 4 times to get it to, to get the person in. But yeah, I've got one. Is that how much those? I need to put my JK Audio one on eBay then, I guess.
A couple times I've gone online to buy one, and I think I saw them up around. Well, I said 600. That's Canadian. Right. I'm calling in from Canada, so it's probably $3.99 American.
That's still that's a few cases of beer.
Of both.
So
and let's be clear, we're not recommending Telos for podcasters. Let's
no,
just be very clear here.
No. Don't go there unless it's a last resort.
Right.
I don't even.
Source Connect is kind of like the replacement for that, right?
It's funny because when I moved into the studio, in order to get the internet at the price I did, I had to take a triple play. I've actually got a phone line here. It's never been hooked up to anything. I could have voicemails and I wouldn't even know it. But I guess I could always revert and use that copper wire if I had to. But actually, it's really not copper. It goes through the cable box, but it's the same tech. So going back to this Source Connect device, so really I'm assuming here, just based on what I've read for like 15 seconds on their website, you got to have a device that connects to your computer in order to use this, don't you?
I'm not too sure if you do. I know it's now compatible that it goes through Chrome. So if you can run it through Chrome, then you'll get somewhere with it. And it's really about having the voiceover person pipe it into a, one of those big studios.
Yeah.
So
long as your microphone then can be heard on Chrome, then you're good.
Right.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
It kind of depends on what your connectors. I suppose you could use a USB mic.
Yeah.
It might be better audio quality to go into a mixer and through like a hybrid into your computer. Right.
The things you don't know. So what's happening up in Canada? How are you guys? Whereabouts in Canada are you at?
I'm in Winnipeg, which is about 2 hours north of Grand Forks, North Dakota. We don't have a lot of cases here. The coronavirus doesn't want to visit Winnipeg any more than the rest of North America, necessarily because of our long, cold winters. But it's all been about flattening the curve and staying at home. And there's really nobody better at staying at home than people from the prairies because it's winter and minus 30 quite often.
Right.
So Matt, how do you think radio is adjusting to all this? Because I've been thinking about them a lot lately, especially with all these local small businesses kind of going out of business and shutting down and things like that. I'm sure it's hitting their bottom line pretty hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that advertisers want to stop advertising. It's just that there's nothing to advertise. So there are some radio stations that are seeing some empty commercial logs and 70% disappearance of all that inventory. One of the things I've known just from working in radio for many years, if we're about to hit a recession, if we're about to, hit turbulent times, the radio station is always the first place that we would see the dip, because that's when, retailers will start to tighten up. And the first budget that always goes is an advertising budget. It's right on Main Street. They pull that one back. The radio station feels it first. And then the rest of North America sort of will hit that bumpy ride. And this one's a little bit different because a lot of people will stop their advertising because there's just nothing to advertise. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's really hitting the bottom line hard. I'm getting sort of double messages from, the radio groups. And by the radio groups, I mean the advocates for radio who are saying, well, this is up or this is up and now's a good time to be involved. The ratings came out, the Arbitron ones came out for New York and Los Angeles, I think 2 days ago. And they told a bit of a horror story for, there's no commutes. So morning drive and afternoon drive. This is a different sort of flattening of the curve, because normally the mornings are up and then it drops a little bit for midday. But now it seems to be just flat right across. And there's some big radio stations with some, I don't want to say ugly looking numbers, but it's not, the cum number, which is the cumulative number of people who will come to a radio station, just, that's dropped a bit. There are people listening longer. There are people tuning in a little bit later, but morning drive just doesn't have the numbers that it once had.
Do you think then that, we've all been watching the slow decline of radio? And again, I'm not one of those people that say that radio is just going to disappear because it's a multi-billion-dollar business. But do you think it takes, 10 weeks to change a habit? Do you think we're here week 9 or so of the lockdown, people are using their different apps, they're using Spotify, Pandora, they're maybe on iHeart, maybe they're jumping around different places, maybe they're not listening at all? Do you think this is going to have let's say we come back 100% tomorrow, which is not. Do you think this is going to hurt them?
Is this a permanent change?
Yeah, permanent change.
Yeah, and I don't think it's all bad, actually. I think that there are people who are now learning to access their local radio station using a smart speaker. Now, they've also learned to do 100 other things now on their smart speaker, like connect their Spotify, learn to listen to their favorite podcasts. So maybe they've learned to connect to their radio station on a smart speaker, but at the same time, they've also learned to find a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's a little bit of good and there's a little bit of bad that comes with that. The real absence that we're seeing with the radio listening is strictly because of the car. And inside the car, the radio is, has been all powerful for a long time. But the result that we see now, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, but the result you see now is because radio has really built itself to be in the car. Mm-hmm. They've dined out on the car ticket for so many years, and today there's no car. And so this is your result.
And also at the same time, you got so many stations that are on autoplay. It's really interesting. When I drive between Michigan and Columbus, it's a 3-hour drive, 15-minute drive. It's like the programming doesn't even change. It's the same programming as I'm driving. And if I listen to the radio, which I'm usually not, but if I've listened to the radio from that, it's like the program, it's almost like it didn't even change channels, because it's a program playlist. It's being played the same place. If you're on a Cumulus station,
stations.
Yeah, it's a Cumulus station here, Cumulus station there, Cumulus station there, or a iHeart station. If I just happen to land on it, it's the same thing. And with weather having been spliced in and goes on repeat, the guy spoke into mic 3 minutes and everything else is a playlist. So the local is not. You hear local ads, but you don't hear local. Very rare do you hear local content. Once in a while, you do.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what's the impact of all this on the content that's coming out of radio stations? I mean, are they having to lay off people Is there fewer people working the stations? Are they going to move more towards automation? All that stuff.
There was nobody working there before, Rob.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay because it really depends on the company. So I know one company in Canada, they have a couple of news stations, just a couple of them, but they managed to find a way to get that news onto all their radio stations in their chain, even though they were fairly music oriented. So yeah, you're going to have to let a few people go inside the radio station. It may not necessarily be on the air. I'll give an example of a radio station in Chicago, that a very popular one as well. They let go the social media person and the producer because right now that may not be what they need, but they need their number one personality, to go in and be the voice and be the empathetic soul that I think people were really looking for. The rush. I put out a podcast episode because my podcast is about broadcast, and it was really about, hey, radio, this is your moment. And I think Rob and I, we attended a conference. We were at the Conclave, and we were on a panel together back in 2017. And at that one in particular, there was, a lot of radio people were saying, well, if there's an emergency, well, the emergency's here. And so I sort of said, how are we really going to react, in the radio space to all this stuff? And I think radio reacted really well. I think people listened to it. But what began to happen is that there became less and less news about this because the message became the same. It's stay home. We're in lockdown. Wait it out. Go to the grocery store. Wear a mask. And once you have those 5 things, you're pretty much done. And so then radio has now, over the last number of weeks, really began to wrestle with how much do we talk about this? How much are we really a source of information about radio, or are we really sort of a salvation and an entertainment piece that gets people away from this lousy situation? So I know there's a lot of discussion. I feel for program directors right now. It is incredibly hard to try to decide exactly what it is, especially if you run a sports radio station.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, we know the Colin Cowherds of the world, some of the more popular national shows, they're going to be okay. At the local level, they've had to make some changes, and some stations have even gone and we're going to talk about COVID, and we're going to be the new, a bit of a news source rather than having to deal with sports because there's just no sports content to talk about. So every market has its own strategy, and nobody knows. The one piece of advice that I think is out there that Jason Barrett, who runs Barrett Sports Media in New York and consults a number of sports stations, he just said, don't look at your numbers. Now is just not the time to be looking at the numbers and worrying. Now is the time to be serving your audience and your advertisers and what you have and what you can do for them.
So did you catch the earlier part of the conversation I had where I'm like, TV's screwed for the fall? Rob's saying, hey, they're going to have all kinds of specials and stuff to keep us entertained. But, their impact right now, they're still running on a lot of programming they did before this all kicked off. So, radio's not so much as affected by because they don't have like this traditional production time. Production is when you set the seat and get, flip the mic on. So any thoughts on TV or through the fall when they don't have no fresh content?
Well, they could do it. I don't know how you're going to get the makeup people on. That's a lot of contact right there. Maybe, there will be something innovative that will come out of this. And I think whether it's for podcasters, but especially for radios, especially for TV, these are tough times. And this is where we're going to learn a little bit about ourselves. And I think the one thing, especially for podcasting, is, everybody being sent home and looking for, source connects and Squadcasts and learning to use it, is we've accelerated this entire thing by probably 3 or 4 years. And really moved it along. TV is going to find a way to innovate. I think we're going to get some really oddball programming, but yeah, productions are shut down, and so what they had on their plate is probably going to get tossed. And one of the things that gets played in my house quite often, and not necessarily my choosing, that's the Real Housewives. But these are people who sit around and gab about nothing all the time and talk and throw pie at each other. None of that stuff. It just looks so dated now. I go, well, that is just so 2019. That has nothing to do with 2020. So I look at an entire franchise like The Real Housewives, and how are you going to film that?
Right.
You're not. That's the thing. Yeah.
So I guess we'll see. But I think I just continue to think about all the things that have happened and what's currently going on and what we're facing over the next year. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity here for podcasters. And like you said, Rob and I, we're kind of, we've been doing this a long time, and we've been used to doing this, what we're doing right now, and in a pretty high level way. And we're seeing a lot of more podcasters, like you said, that are starting to figure out how to do their shows with 2 or 3 people remote. And I think that's a good thing. So maybe this doesn't bode well for studios, but at the same time, maybe it bodes well for people that are being facilitators and making sure that they don't have the equipment in the home. There's going to be that guy with they're all going to come into that source, and he's going to be the one that's going to record it and master it and produce it. And, they've got a mic, but they're not necessarily going to have to record the show. So yeah, maybe we're just going to see a whole bunch of new ways of doing podcasts.
So, well, Matt, that's what do you think that there's an opportunity for podcasters here to collaborate more with radio? Is there, or is it just not that type of situation?
Depends on what country I think you're talking about, because I know in Canada we've been very slow to get into it. I think we've all been to the conferences where we look around and we wonder what the radio folks are up to and what they're bringing to. And I think, podcasters very suspicious that, okay, the big guys are here and we're going to take over and stuff. And really, here's what radio has to offer the most, and that's their airwaves. And anytime you can get a podcast to, promote it on a radio station, if you can cut a deal with a radio station to have, your podcast promoted in whatever way, that is awesome. I've even seen some data that came out a couple of years ago that when we had 2 companies, we had Chorus and Rogers, that both went in on podcasts. They got podcast companies and started to promote their podcasts on an ongoing basis. We saw some, a huge jump in the Gen X connecting to podcasts. And, this is Edison research, and this was Tom Webster's slide. And I saw it. It was 35 to 64. There was a big 9% jump in podcast listening over the course of a year. And I believe radio had a lot to do with it. And it's 2 reasons. Todd, you touched on it. It's the radio that feels a little bit homogenous and a little bit dull. But at the same time, here's radio coming along and pushing all these podcasts. And we had an explosion of Canadian podcasts, hit the airwaves and into people's phones.
Kind of reminds me, I was taking a gal from the East Coast, Boston specifically, that's been on radio for years, and she was going to be our guest at NAB, and talking about this, convergence. I need to have her on the show, Rob. She'd be a lot of fun for an hour and a half, but teach us something. But she thinks that radio stations have she has strong opinions, and she's not at all optimistic. She's kind of like me, she just kind of says it the way it is. And she doesn't understand why most radio stations are not picking talent out of their areas. The guy that's doing the tech show, the gal that's doing the science show, or the person that's doing, all these different genres of stuff, and why they're not saying, hey, produce me a 5-minute clip or 3-minute clip. We're going to run that 2 or 3 times a week, segmented in. You're going to go on the marquee of the website as being, talent for the radio station, and bill what. And if I was a radio station program manager, I'd be like, right now, I'd look for 25 podcasters to give me fill on times when I don't have stuff to talk about, and then run that 3-minute segment. Something that's been produced locally, maybe a national show, but it's maybe a local podcast. To me, that is, I don't run a radio station. I run a podcast company. So I think that radio stations are missing out on all this great talent and all this great content, and they wouldn't have to pay for it.
Well, it's a cost thing, but also you say you don't have to pay for it, but it's time.
It's time.
And they want to maximize what they can with the people they have already in the studio. So we're going to lay off somebody in Jacksonville, and we're going to make somebody over in Tampa do the production work for that. These are the efficiencies that get created. And every time an efficiency like that takes place, that's just less time to, bring in a podcaster to do things. And you mentioned it, some of these radio stations are empty, and it just takes time to do all this stuff. And, I think the biggest shock for radio, and for years it's always been, I'm very surprised that radio has not gone in a little bit deeper and get some podcasts together that are organic. But the truth is, podcasting is hard work. And most of my radio friends, and there's somebody I had on my podcast recently His name is Dana Marshall. He does mornings in Kalamazoo, and he has a wonderful podcast called My Prince Story Podcast, where he brings people on to talk about their stories and love of Prince music, or maybe they met Prince or a trip to Paisley Park and whatnot. But he's the first to tell you, and he does a morning show, which is very hard. That creating a podcast episode is very, very hard, and no disrespect to the midday announcer, but your commercials and your weather and your music is all picked for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're only going to have to talk for 2.5 minutes, perhaps in an hour. But if we're going to do the same 1 hour audio, we have to create 60 minutes of content. And podcasting's hard in that sense.
But isn't that where the magic of radio has been lost? Because before, this goes way back. Let's go into the maybe 70s when consolidation started to happen. So many people that weren't in that era didn't know that your local station was truly local, and everything was done in that station was there. There wasn't this remote crap that was coming in. You may have had news reports come in from CBS or some other, you may have got a national news snippet, but the majority of the stuff that radio station did 24 hours a day was people with butts in the seats. And that doesn't work no more because of the debt and the consolidation and autoplay and everything else that they've automated. I don't know. And maybe those days will never come back. So maybe I'm talking about a pipe dream here of having, 5 podcast segments a week inside a radio station.
Well, so often the radio also for many years was the gateway to what people really wanted. So if you wanted to hear the new song from Metallica, you had to sit by the radio and wait for it. So they had the music component, but they also had the personality component.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, they had a lot that they offered in that sense. And kind of like the newspaper where it gets stripped away, sort of out comes the sports section, goes to ESPN, and then the classifieds go on to Craigslist, and then out comes the next section, and eventually the paper becomes very thin. Radio has undergone the same sort of thing. One of them was, the internet came in, and, you didn't have to be the 10th caller for front row tickets anymore. The artists could do that themselves. And of course, the same thing with delivery. The brand new song would premiere perhaps somewhere else for fans only,
right,
for Metallica, instead of, everybody having to wait for the satellite show to come down. So it's not just one thing. And it's not just the personalities, because, people have connected to the wackiness on YouTube, and they can find a little bit of what they used to get at radio, but it's gently become unbundled over time. And it's been sort of a slow process. There's still tons of value in the radio. I think, live and local is something that I think that comes out of the sales department and gets, promoted because, we're selling locally. Mm-hmm. That's for the advertisers. I think James Cridlin put this in. I saw a post somewhere where he mentioned it because he's a radio futurologist, don't you know?
Right.
He said real and relevant, and real and relevant is, truly where radio needs to be. I think one of the things podcast has really sucked out of radio is empathy. For years as program directors, we used to say, hey, this is one-on-one listening. And, actually podcasts became one-on-one listening.
That's right.
It became headphones experience. It became personal. It became emotional. It became a lot of the things that we used to get a little bit of from radio that we don't necessarily get anymore. I'm finding now with the internet, radio is sort of talking at people.
Mm-hmm.
Podcasting is talking to people.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it better than I would have. Matter of fact, that phrase was in my brain before you said it.
And if radio, and I know we don't have a ton of radio people watching this, but if you sit and listen to the radio, you're just hearing a whole bunch of people offering up all these doggy commands about what to do. Be there, buy this, go on Facebook, join us on Facebook, join the conversation, buy this now, call now. It's just a list of instructions. And there is no relationship in the world that is going to be able to endure somebody so bossy like that. It's not going to happen.
Or you call in Howard Stern and yelled at and then hung up on.
Constantly.
Yeah, I stepped on you, Rob. What were you saying, Rob?
Oh, it's just all calls to action.
Yeah.
That's what radio has been. And oftentimes kind of, pretty bold about it too. Might be a nice way of saying it.
So, crystal ball for you. I think radio's got a lot of years left. What do you think, Matt? How many years does radio have left? Is it a generational thing?
Yeah, it's got a lot of years left, and especially if we wind up getting back in the cars, I don't see that it's going to get too much easier. I know we say it's going to get easier, but to pull all the cars off the road, that takes a generation. It's probably going to take about 2 generations before we can actually seamlessly connect to an FM as easily as we can connect to Spotify.
Yeah,
it just takes time to turn over all those car radios and whatnot. There's still there's still a love affair between the car and traveling and connecting to radio that is going to be there. I think the end for radio is going to be, and I want to quote Kipper McGee, who has a podcast called Brandwidth on Demand. He's also a radio consultant, but radio is going to author its own demise. He said they will be the authors of their own finish. But the transmitter is really going to be the point. I mean, are these companies going to want to pay to maintain all these transmitters? Because right now they're having trouble finding people to fix them, to maintain them, to keep them up. And, I saw one piece of research where, somebody, I think it was a millennial, who said, I really like my phone. I get a nice clear audio piece, and the radio station's got a bit of a fuzz to it. That was in Vancouver, where they've got some mountains and stuff. But I thought it was interesting that a piece like that would come up. And I think when it just gets too expensive to deal with the radio transmitter, then everything will just move, online. And, if you get rid of the radio transmitter, you don't have to worry about the FCC, right?
That's right.
Well, and also there's another component of this that's been around for a long time, is that frequency, right? That frequency may turn out to be more valuable in a digital transmission than it is on a like a more of a radio type of usage. So that's the other part of it too, and that's been talked about for a long time. You start thinking about how scarce radio frequencies are. Radio is holding on to big blocks of frequency that could be used for wireless data transfers. So
big blocks of long range RF frequency.
Right. And that may be more valuable than having a radio station use it.
But
yeah, 20 years off. I mean, I still see this being 20 years off. There's still tons
I agree
of value.
With you. No, I agree.
And even we find the value. I mean, we would love to have our podcast promoted on radio.
Sure.
It's still so powerful. It really is. And I think, we'll find a way to use it for good rather than evil.
And I think too is that, I looked at my car. I had a 2009 Mazda CX-9, and Bluetooth was it in that car. There was nothing smart about that screen. I bought a 2019 Ford Edge Loaded. It has great stuff, but guess what? I'm still connected to. I'm still using Bluetooth, using my phone, even though there's all these selections of stuff I can do. I can do Pandora. I can listen to Spotify. I'm still Bluetoothing it with my. Now I'm the only one in the vehicle, so that's my option. I'm sure if there was multiple drivers, they might be using some of that other stuff. But the thing for me was having adult children now is having them come through the process of, making this transition. My oldest is 30 and my youngest is 16. It was watching the rearview mirror, what was in their ears, and then asking, what are you doing on your phone? And then watching them transition to drivers and then say, okay, what are you doing in your car? First thing my daughter did, and she got in the car, if it was set to FM, it went to Bluetooth. And I said, she is not going to ever listen to radio. So for me, and that's pretty much her use case now. I don't know if that's everyone's use case, but I think this younger generation, as they age out, are going to, and again, that's what's at 20 years, right? 20, 30 years that's left. I think radio's probably got a good 20 left. But after that, don't know. But we'll see if this event helps change habits. When we're back in our vehicles, we'll see if the numbers come back up. At least
I think it'll be a slow, process back, but it will come back. The commuting and people love being in their cars. Oh, they also they love it's a bit of it's the me time.
Yep.
They have, and remember also the me time. And I think we had a lot of drop off in the podcast at first. I know I kept talking to you guys about my 15% drop that I saw on all the podcasts that I was working with. But it's the reverse of that, and that's that you've got kids home.
Mm-hmm.
So people who would maybe vacuum or get groceries while listening to a podcast on their solo time, that solo time is gone because now you've got the homeschooling and the kids on the Zoom and all this stuff, and it's just all part of this this disruption that we see. So everything that we thought that we knew has essentially been dynamited. And I think this is a wonderful time to sit and look at the data, and maybe we do it now and maybe we do it later and sort of say, oh, this is what happened and this is why it happened. And there's so much to take away. We're going to learn so many things about what can be done as we're doing, whether it's Source Connect and whatnot. But look at the NFL. How much fun did everybody have looking into Bill Belichick to see his dog?
Although I must admit, the draft to me was a good first run, but there was too much delay. You could see that digital delay as people were like looking in their living rooms and they announced who was, went to Detroit Lions and for 5 minutes the guy's sitting there and then he finally gets the notifications. So that was a little bit of hokey, but yeah, it was fun watching that. But
I mean, they'll probably keep elements of that. We're all going to keep elements of whatever. So it's either been accelerated or it's something we're going to keep. Maybe there'll be some more working from home.
Well, look what Twitter announced. If you want to stay home, you don't have to ever come back to the office, is what the Twitter boss said yesterday. Yep. So, what's
I think you're going to see this with a lot of these big tech companies too. They're just going to let people work from home.
Don't have to have that overhead of that big office space. Right. So that's a real estate impact. I think about when I left Hawaii, I was spending 3.5 hours a day in my car, Monday through Friday. It's killing me. That's the reason I'm sitting in the seat. I'm mostly sitting in the seat today, as I just couldn't handle taking the kid to school, spend an hour and a half to get back from school. It was bad. But what it did do is it gave me lots of time to listen to my 100 podcasts every 2 weeks. And now my commute is 11 minutes. So I'm definitely not getting through my podcast as much as I was before. Yesterday, I took the long route home, added a whole whopping 5 minutes to my drive, just so I could listen to a little bit more of my favorite podcasts before I got to the house and got distracted. So I'm living proof. I'm not getting through my podcast as fast as I was. And, I'm supposed to be the P1 podcast listener. Well, Rob, we're supposed to, I don't know. I've made a habit.
Are we an outlier? I mean, I'm the same way, Todd. I subscribe to 100 shows, but do I listen to 100 shows?
No. I listened to 100 new shows every 2 weeks for years.
Right. Right.
If
but
nothing
that's not
more,
normal listening behavior.
No. But I'm saying that we should be the top. You and I should have, like, say, you got 100 shows. You're not listening to 100 shows, but you've got 100 shows. No one else has 100 shows in their in their subscribe list besides people like us. Maybe most people have 6 or 7.
Right. That's what the surveys show, right?
Well, that's what they say. Well, Matt, it's interesting from your perspective on radio here. What's funny is I don't even think about radio too much. I really don't, because it's not in my DNA anymore.
Yeah, it stopped being for me too, because I started to work from home and I stopped listening to morning shows for a while and started to, it was the only time it was really on was in the car. And if I went to run some errands, because I was listening to all the podcasts I wanted to at home. And so it has fallen off in some cases, but at the same time, there are some radio shows that I'm listening to later in the day on podcast. So, because I know I can get them later.
Yeah.
One of them being, the Colin Cowherd show. And then another one is a morning drive show that I listen to.
I was doing, when I was doing that every other week down in Columbus, in basically, 3.5 hours down, 3.5 hours back, I was often listening to podcasts, but oftentimes I was also in the morning, especially in the morning drive down there, I was listening to Stern, because I've always been fascinated by his rapport, how he engages the audience. You learn a lot from him, but he wears thin on you pretty quick. So it's like I'd get, 3.5 hours of him, once every 2 weeks. And I I think that even Stern is getting a little sick of some of the stuff even at XM. So I just wonder if he'll ever bite the bullet and do a full-time podcast. I don't know. I don't think so. He's talked so bad about it over the years. I can't imagine that he would. He'll probably just retire and sit on his millions of dollars.
We've talked a lot about commercial radio, but Sirius XM has done very, very well over the last number of years. Slow growth. A lot of people who start to listen to it really like it. I rented a truck a few weeks ago, and it came with all the channels, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's with my car as well for up until June, unless I renew it. I don't even know what it costs for a year of Sirius XM, but
and Sirius has been picking up podcasts.
Well, they have from the beginning, though,
and creating radio shows around the show concepts. They've been doing that for years.
Well, they've got how many channels on Sirius? I know that Stern's on 100. I don't even know what the upper limit on Sirius XM is.
I think they're well over 150, 180 channels. Something like that.
So 180 times 24. That's
right.
That's a lot. That's a lot to fill.
Well, you're splicing your audience into lots of different channels, right?
But you got something.
Like cable television.
But you got something for everybody. It's true.
Right. I mean, really, if you think of Sirius XM, it's a lot like cable television, right? You get all these channels of different types of content, right? It's very similar. But hey, Todd, before we leave the show this week, I wanted to mention about this survey that came out from Podfest China. I don't know if you got a chance.
I heard about this. I didn't read it.
To look at that, and Matt, did you get a chance to see what this thing had to share about China?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't? Okay. I thought it was really, really interesting that the number one listening platform in China is Apple Podcasts. Based on this survey, and that what was it? Over half of the respondents said that they listen to podcasts every day in China.
So that tells me if it's on Apple Podcasts, then you have an upper, because you think about the Chinese and the disparity between,
right,
those that have money and those that don't, and there's really very little middle class. There's a minor middle class. You can almost be guaranteed that that's middle class and up. That is, number one, can even afford an iPhone,
right?
And then, so that means the upper echelon of Chinese citizens are listening to podcasts, but they're listening mostly to Chinese podcasts, though, right?
It doesn't really. Well, it doesn't say what language. It doesn't cover that in here. What I would say, though, that many Chinese people understand English. They may not be able to speak it very well.
But how much of the Great Firewall of China blocks content from the United States? I'm sure that's maybe someone that listens to the show from China can tell us.
Right. But
if we have anybody.
I mean, it's really interesting. It said half of the respondents say that they listen every day, and most of what's being consumed over there is self-education type content. Learning new things is 88%. About 71% is hobbies and things like that, and about 47% is more practical knowledge and skills, and just a little bit less than 20% of the Chinese population has a college degree, which I thought that's a pretty significant number, because I think here in the U.S., I think it's quite a bit lower than 20%.
But if you think about that, though, you would assume does the survey say how many of them have college degrees, or did they just say half of them don't? Is that the listener base? Half of them do not have a college degree?
It does not say what the percentage of the listeners have college degrees, but it does say that 20% of the Chinese citizenry, just a little less than 20%, have college degrees. And as we know, in the U.S., the vast majority of podcast listeners, it does say 86.4% of podcast listeners that are in China hold a college degree. So it's definitely skewing towards the slightly less than 20% of the Chinese population that are actually listening to podcasts, which is which I guess is still quite a bit less than the U.S. really, if you think about it. But it's still 20% of the Chinese population is a lot of people.
No, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, it's interesting, and it's good to know that podcasting is alive and well in China. I'd love to see the content break down how much it's internal and foreign, because there is no freedom of speech in China per se. So you have to be very, very careful, or you get you talk about the coronavirus, you're going to disappear. So
right, yeah, there you go. But there, it's just one of those markets that we don't hear a lot about, and that's one thing that's really been great about what James Cridlin has really brought to the podcasting medium. Is, his newsletter is kind of a global view.
So who did that survey then?
It was part of Podfest China, which was China's first annual podcast themed conference. I guess it was like last month or something like that. So, yeah. So you can get the whole report off of Pod News. So, anyway.
So Matt, what's your crystal ball on the podcasting space over the next 6 months?
And I'm having trouble just trying to keep up with this right now. But we're gonna have a lot of pod fading. At 90,000 new podcasts last
in 1 month, right? Yeah.
I'm like you, Todd and Rob. Like I'm getting calls. What's this podcast? What's this about? How can we do it? People just asking and so interested in it because they see people can do it from home, and then they also want to do it from home. And I just think at some point, most of the podcasts are going to find a way. They'll either pod fade or they'll move to the podcasting cemetery Anchor and bury themselves there. Sorry.
That's probably where most of them are starting.
Right.
Is the key thing.
You don't have to pod fade. You just go put it on Anchor and just let it sit there. Right? And when you want to come back, you can just bring it back to life again. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we're getting. I mean, a lot of people are asking about it. I think some people are going to get fed up with their 22 downloads, but I really do think that there is something to what Rob said earlier, and that's do we have enough people to listen and to consume to all this stuff? And marketing gets a little bit harder, and that's why I'm sort of looking at finding a way to get the podcast that I work with. Can I maybe do a deal with a radio station to have some sort of co-promotion to get it out there, because we're going to have to find new ways to market these podcasts to get them out there. Because right now there's probably a really, really good podcast. Like we always talk about what's the next serial or anything like that. Well, it's probably already been made, but nobody's discovered it yet.
Right.
So it's kind of marketing.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to agree with you that there's going to be a lot of pod fading. And matter of fact, my team's been talking about it a little bit because we've had a huge number of people come in and start a second show. And to me, I'm thinking those are the shows that are probably going to be the ones that are going to get burned first, because as soon as those people get called back to work and they have to commute, and all of a sudden they've got 3 less hours a day because of this and kids and events, and if that stuff ramps, but we might be okay for about a year. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of dead carcasses of podcasts laying around for sure.
I know,
I think it all gets back to how fast we can we grow listenership, but as long as we're on a listenership decline, it's going to be tough. Yeah.
But also expectations, but there's a group of podcasters out there that, believe it or not, are not worried about their numbers. They want to do a podcast because they're pissed off. They want to have a venue to say something besides TikTok and what they're finding on Facebook and being devoiced. You'd be amazed the number of people that are coming starting podcasts because they're pissed off that what they're trying to say on Facebook is being shut off.
Right.
So, to me, it's just what goes around comes around, because I've been talking about this for years, about this deplatforming, and all of a sudden people are figuring out my post got shut down because of why, and regardless of the reason why, they're starting to find out that these platforms aren't as friendly to people as they have made themselves out to be.
Mm-hmm.
One of the changes that I made, because everybody does have more time, and maybe some people are doing a second show, and maybe it may go away when I don't want to say when this all ends, because I think it all changes. I don't think it actually ends. But I started to do some video stuff. So I'd bring back old guests onto my show, and we would do exactly what you guys are doing now, which is, do the video thing. And you guys were the first ones who sort of turned me on to StreamYard. And I said, well, here I am. I'm not traveling. There's no conferences. I'm supposed to be at Canadian Music Week this week. That's not happening. I can't remember. I think in June it was going to go to the Conclave, and then July there was going to be something. And then August was going to be, Podcast Movement, which is now October. All this free real estate of time. So I said, well, why not bring back some old guests and maybe once or twice a week fire up StreamYard and learn how to do what you guys have been doing. What was once and now twice a week. So anyway, thanks for showing me that.
I see a huge number of YouTubers using StreamYard. Huge number. Because guess what they can't do? They can't go out and shoot. So they're reverting and doing, every time I see one of those YouTube guys, I send them an email. I say, hey, you can turn this into a podcast real easy, right? Right. Because they're out of, they can't go do what their monkey business of what they normally do, and they're shooting YouTube videos. So, I think there's going to be some, StreamYard's definitely a winner over this period of time. And not to mention all the virtual meeting folks too, but
Zoom and all those folks too.
Yeah,
right.
I did my first video conference on a other platform today. Was kind of weird. I had to learn a new one today, but there's all kinds of them popping up. Well, actually, Rob, we've got 7 minutes left because we started late. It seems like we're already over time, but we've got about 10 minutes. Anything else that we needed to cover before we blast out of here today?
I can't think of anything that's pressing right now.
There was something I was going to talk about, but I forgot about it, whatever it was.
I know that the Edison folks are doing another webinar about what's happening down in Australia. So if you have an interest in seeing how the infinite dial numbers in Australia are going to come out, that's on May 20th at 10 a.m. Sydney time, I guess. So that'd be the only thing.
And Matt,
go ahead. Yeah. Well, I do know that we have listeners to the show that are down in Australia, so that's why I wanted to mention that.
Lots of secret listeners too. Hey, Matt, we invited you on. We didn't even ask you to promote your show. Where can people find your podcast at?
Right. My podcast is the Podcaster Broadcast. It's called the Sound Off Podcast, which is named after my company, the Sound Off Media Company.
Awesome. So soundoff.com or what's the
soundoffpodcast.com.
Soundoffpodcast.com. So definitely go over and get some, having you on refreshes my brain. Yeah. Oftentimes we meet people, we talk to them, what you do, and then it's like it gets data dumped. So I'm going to add you to my subscribe list. Definitely want to listen to what the radio people have to say, because it's important that we track that as well on this side of the fence too.
Well, we've done some, I just shifted into COVID, right? And talk COVID talk, because that's what people are into. And I said, I don't want to get wrapped up in this, but you have to. And I did one episode actually involving the murders up in Nova Scotia. A mass murder, and that sort of, 22 people dead doesn't happen in Canada. It's never happened before. It's the largest one ever, but I did one episode on that, but everything else around that has been about the pandemic and how radio broadcasters are maneuvering their way through. I'm going to add a podcast component as well and invite people on. I've had both you guys on my podcast at one point or another, so we're going to keep bringing podcasters on. And I think when I do that so that you can connect with the radio folk, and we're not trying to teach them anything, but at some point I do believe that there's going to be an intersection of podcast and radio. Right now, they just quite haven't met yet, but it's coming.
They don't go out and drink. I remember at a conference I was at where there was 175 people in the audience, and I think when the podcast session stopped, there's like 10 left. Everyone else went to the bar. At least now, literally, that's truly what happened in Los Angeles. And I think
that's been many years ago.
Okay, Todd. But now they're not leaving the room. They're sticking around and listening to the conversations, and so that's. That we've got their attention that far, and we can learn stuff from the radio people too. Don't get me wrong. I think, you've got this huge huge pool of talent, and they've been creating media since God was a child, and so they know what emotional triggers to push. At least they used to. But
radio has been writing promotions and marketing, and they write this stuff, and they've created appointment listening for so long. It is the best thing that they do. And I think podcasters, if there's one thing I want to tell podcasters that they really need to do, and I know we go back and forth on this, on whether or not we should stop and do seasons, but release your episodes consistently is something that I really think is important. Because the morning show host on your radio station is there at 6 o'clock every morning or 5:30. But the reason why he's so popular, and the reason why, is because he's consistently always there. And it may not be the best show, and there'll be an off day, but it's always there.
Yep.
And that scores so many points, and it's something that podcasters that I've come across have just fought against. So, I release Tuesday and then I release Thursday, and they wonder why their numbers don't grow. But if you can be consistent, it'll add 20% to your numbers and you will grow.
People build you into their lives.
Yep.
Right.
Mike reminded me, I knew what it was. Luminary got another $30 million.
Oh, wow. And,
guys, I got a 4 o'clock coming up here in 2 minutes.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
So,
well, thank you for joining us.
So I have one word for the idiot that invested in Luminary.
He went back to the trough, Todd.
I don't care. They went and got $30 million more, Rob. $30 million.
I'm sure they have a big burn rate.
30 million. Give me 30 million. I own half the podcasting space in a week. 30 million. 30 million. Take the toilet. No. Take a trash can. Big, a 55-gallon drum, cut the top out of it. Take that $30 million and 10,000 and just toss it in there as fast as you can. You'll get the same. You get the same result. $30 million.
Todd, you could have a nice bonfire with that too.
30 million. Think how much have they burned so far? Someone give me a number. What was their first round of 30 million?
I think it was like 100 million.
It's like, what?
Right. Hey, Todd, did you see this this announcement from the Cumulus Media folks, the owners of Westwood One, said on an earnings call that their podcast revenue is up 60% year on year in March.
I'm not surprised. They've been working hard over there at Cumulus.
Right. And
really, I'm not
downloads
surprised.
were also up by 50% year on year.
I'm not surprised. The Cumulus guys have been working hard. And that team over there is doing a good job. Congratulations to them.
Yeah. Thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they came from a year ago to where they are today.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Earnings report, they're 50% up year over year.
Right. Exactly.
Now, did they break the number out? They probably didn't, did they?
Well, they probably did on the details.
And the 1Q or whatever it was. Yeah. Sometimes they don't. They don't have to. They don't break them out until the number gets big enough where it's, Apple's and Google's all done that over the years. Alphabet, they don't break out dollar amounts so they get to a certain stack in the pie. Even Amazon's done that over years. They said, we're up 50%, or it was probably, $100. But then after 10 years, it was, $5 million.
I'm glad you said it, Todd, because it just depends on where you start from, right?
Right.
You start dealing with those kind of numbers, and year over year is not like February to March.
No.
Or February to May, right? All right.
But still, I know that team over there has been working hard. Some of their folks over there, I've talked to a few times, and
yeah, you bet.
So anytime, okay, I laugh. I bust on Luminary.
Right.
Okay, so I want people to make money in this space. I want people to make a lot of money in this space. I want podcasters to make a lot of money. I want podcasting companies to make a lot of money. I want people to make money.
Right.
But sometimes you just got to call out stupid. So, if Luminary makes it, great. Congratulations. But I'm not willing to take that bet. 30 million to tide them over down during the reasoning, they said they took 30 million because it was to tide them over the decline in the COVID-19 space. That was why they had to take money, because of a decline.
Great time to invest. Yeah.
Great time to invest in real estate is what it's going to be here soon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
I don't know if I don't know if the problem is, I don't know that commercial real estate is going to come back after this.
Yeah. Why is it's location?
Well, that's certainly true. That's always been the case. But, I think this is going to force a lot of small businesses. A lot of these strip malls are going to be empty.
Strip malls malls are already empty. Strip malls, here's the, all right.
It's all,
here's my opinion.
Moving online.
Here's my opinion.
All moving online.
Here's my opinion. If Walmart can be open, any business should be able to open that sells retail stuff. Why can't anyone else be open? That's the stupidity
it's the food part, Todd. That's what keeps them open.
Okay. You can still go into Walmart here in my town, and you can still buy a trash can. So
maybe all these small businesses need to open up a little small grocery store in their stores.
Absolutely. I would sell Cokes. Absolutely. I got food product.
Right.
You go buy 3 cases of Coke at Walmart and then put them in your store for sale, and you've got food.
Right.
Absolutely. Essential. You have essential product. Okay. Anyway,
yeah.
I better stop talking about it, because people are going to tell us we sound stupid, and we're, sound like idiots talking about COVID.
That's okay with me. That means that they're watching.
That's right.
They're listening. Yeah.
So
trash us all you want.
Please. That's even makes it fun for me, because I get to talk about it.
Yes.
So, but I don't have to have it in the comment section.
Yeah.
Of my Facebook page.
Right.
All right. So email your comments to us, Todd@blueberry.com, @Geek News on Twitter. I'll be happy to read any email you send. I'll read it right here on the air.
Right.
Absolutely.
Be careful what you say.
Because I'll read every email word for word. We need
Send them all to Todd.
We need
he has all the extra time.
We need a Sal for this show is what we need.
Yes.
So that's an inside joke for my listeners. Rob, where can they reach you?
Twitter is great at Rob Greenlee, robgreenlee.com, and my email, if you want to send me a inside track on anything that you want to share, is robg@lipson.com.
And by the way, we did give New Media Show some free advertising the other night on my show.
You did?
Yeah, I forgot. I forgot to change the banner out. I left the banner out during.
Oh, I did see that, Todd. I was like going, is he doing the New Media Show without me?
Yeah, without you. So yeah, I left the banner. I got to the end of the show. I turned around, I'm like, oh, I didn't switch the banner out. Yeah. So hey, everyone, thanks for being here. Sorry we're late, but we'll be back with you Sunday. Should be no change in schedule there. 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Come out, hang out, have fun. If you have a comment and you want to come on the show, let us know. Definitely open to have guests. Thanks, Matt, for coming on today. It was a great conversation. Definitely appreciate it. And but everyone else, we'll see you next time here on the New Me Show. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
While the show is wrapping down and you're seeing the New Media Show banner, Rob, my mouse battery went dry halfway through the show. I couldn't change any tabs in my browser, so I was like, I don't have nothing to talk about. So because I had stuff up, and I was like, and it's not like the lap wasn't easy to reach around and make a change.
Right.
So here we're talking behind the New Media Show banner being down.